Okay, here we are, Hoping People, Lesson 9. We've been discussing how to be a hope center. We've discussed what is hope, developing our spiral notebook is obviously where we're applying everything that we're saying, and journaling. Talked about being, again, a hope center, and now we're talking about the pillars of a hope center. What's a foundation? You have to have a vision that's clear, the foundation, and then you have to have the values and the vehicles, which we'll speak to. So we've spoken to last time about hoping God called you to a practical application to look for you in your life in this hope journal, how God had been there to develop your hope in God, and talked about how you could do that in the future. So let me open up with a great quote. And it's, "Without hope, men are only half alive." I shared with you, through the age of rhetoric, and just how men have been persuaded. It's always been the hopers. Well, this was Charles Sawyer. So with hope, they dream, they think, they work. Thomas Fuller said, "Great hope in God makes great men." And Mother Teresa said, "We want to create hope for the person. Our greatest need is to create hope. Always hope," Mother Teresa said. Isn't that good? And then Bernie Siegel said, "Refusal to hope is nothing more than a decision to die." Hope is the parent of faith, Bartel said. Hope in God arouses as nothing else a passion for the possible. William Coffin said that. And it says, when you say, and this is our quote that will lead us into this next pillar, when you say a situation or a person is hopeless, you are slamming the door in the face of God. That was by Charles L. Allen. So important. The Bible, again, we substantiated in the scripture these pillars of hope that build a hope center. The second pillar of hope, which Jesus reflected so well, so deeply, spent his whole life on earth modeling, spent his existence, in the scripture modeling, is hoping in people. What's that mean? We say people are fallen, the people are... Well, there's a redemptive nature in human beings. They've been created in the nature of God. And so, for every human being, God shares with us through his word about hoping in who he is and his ability to bring forth his true nature in human beings. So we're never to despair over a human being. We look at them with the eyes of hope, that in a God that's greater and in the nature that he put in them that is greater, to bring them forth into a place where they shine like the stars. His mandate is to bring forth beauty from ashes, perceptions of hopelessness that human beings have about themselves. Our chief responsibility as believers is to give them hope in who they are unto God. Christ in them, the hope of glory. It's an astounding understanding and concept, something the devil has radically desired as a chief job to destroy. His chief job is to accuse the brethren day and night, to accuse people, and to steal their beauty. People are what Jesus came to die for. The immortal or the immeasurable value of a human being. The worth of an object is the price paid for it. And there is no greater price that was paid for a human being than the life of the Son of God. Just reflect on that. So we're looking at this pillar of your house where you hope in people. And it can happen subtly, covertly, inwardly, where disappointment comes in about human beings. And my father, again, was a reflection of Jesus and was one of the greatest hopers in people that I ever experienced and got to live with, obviously. He was an inner city principal, and I can just remember this one time where he brought inner city young people to our home on the weekends, and they'd hang out. And most of the time it was okay, we'd have fun with them, but there was one young man he'd bring named Robert. Robert would beat us up when my dad wasn't around, and Robert was just real rough, and he'd tear the pockets off your pants, and I can just remember dreading Robert coming to our home. I did not have hope for the nature of God or for this young man's future. And I was young myself. I went in and made an appeal with my brothers and sisters about Robert and said, bring others, but don't bring Robert. And my dad looked off into the distance and looked back at us, and he said, there's beauty in there. And so Robert came the next weekend, and he was in our living room, and we had a piano. It was right by our front door. We grew up in a Catholic neighborhood with hundreds of children, it seemed like. And so Robert went over to that piano. We said, can you play something? And he was reluctant. And then Robert started to play. And then Robert started to play more. And then Robert started to play. And I have never heard anyone before that or after that play a piano like that. And the beauty and the emotion that came out of Robert and what it was unlocked through Robert. Our whole front yard was filled with the neighbors. They just came from every which direction, they were playing and dropping their footballs, and they sat there, and everybody heard Robert play that day. Everybody heard the beauty come out of Robert that day. And my dad was standing next to me, and I said, yeah, Dad, there is beauty in there. And he said, always hope. Always, always hope, Bobby and people. And he just said Jesus did even for those ones that put him on the cross. Said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. That they're oppressed, and there's an enemy, and they've made bad decisions. But he said, you know, even Judas he called friend. There's just this hope in this real beauty in human beings. You know, one time I was working late at night, and I was going out of a Quick Trip. It's a convenience store in Kansas City, and I teach my children this. And I heard banging in the trash can by late at night, 3 in the morning, by a store next to us in this Quick Trip. And I go and I flip the lid up, and there's 2 older people, and they're rummaging around for trash. I call them out of the trash can, and I just, you know, I said, this isn't going to happen. And I just declared over these people, held their hand about these people, the hope in them, the hope in who they were, the hope in their beauty. I shouted out, we have a king in the making. And he was an alcoholic. I said, we have a queen in the making, a princess unto him. Jesus' favorite flower in the garden. Now, I left that place that night, but they wept. I found out the man had been an accountant and ended up losing his money in the boats, and then their lives disintegrated. Then these noble people got into a place of what seemed like disrepair and lost their hope in who they were. I left that night after that prayer, and I came back a few months later, and there had been these people across the street that were their friends that owned a machine shop or had watched out for them. And they said, you can't believe what's happened. The transformation. You had a little hope in these people. And they said, they've quit drinking. They're back with their family. He's back doing accounting. She's a seamstress. And I just thought, if I could do that with my life, if I could build hope centers where people come in and really see themselves according to God's eyes. So I would encourage in this assignment, practical application, I would role play. There's 2 things. One is just to ask the Lord if there's people that have been moved in the disappointment room in your heart. Sometimes they're the ones closest to you. Fathers, sons, brothers, sisters, people in the business. And just ask the Lord how you're to give people a break and to see their best. And take the scriptures on hope and cultivate hope for that person. And then the second thing I would encourage you to do is to role play, to sit down, and if there's a person that has given you a difficult challenge in your life, role play or find someone, better yet, this action step, that's a champion of this person. If my heart starts to go to disappointment, I don't have hope in people at the center of my home, I'm going to find, or in my business, who's a champion of that person that will speak to me about the qualities. So I have a man in our office named John Shore who's a patriarch and he's turned 70, and he's never met a person he doesn't love. So I ask him to speak about a person that I'm struggling with, hoping in, and he'll always bring me hope in that person. So that's an assignment, to move forward and find the champion of that person, and also to write in your diary just the hopes for a person that might be one that you're struggling with or that one that you love. And so when we'll put up on the webpage, like how I do it with my wife or others, I just go through the alphabet. I'll say, I hope in how she is abundantly available for our children, how she's a compassionate woman, hope in the way that she's filled with joy, and it just gives that magnification of hope in a people in the place of a home. God bless you.